Hey, every morning, or hey, everybody. Good morning. Trey Griggs here with Beta Consulting Group. Thanks for joining us for episode 20 of Standing Out, a daily podcast about sales, marketing, and leadership. It's a somber morning with the news of our good friend Joshua Walker's beautiful 3-year-old daughter, Eleanor, who tragically passed away this weekend. Josh, man, we love you. You're in our thoughts and prayers. Can't even imagine what you're going through, man. But anything you need, let us know. If you guys out there would be praying for his family, I just asked him what I could do for him. He said, just hug your kids a little bit tighter. And I would say that to all of us out there that, when you see your kids, hug them a little tighter for Josh. And Josh, we love you, man. We're going to be thinking about you and really appreciate you and all that you do in our industry. And if you need anything, man, just let us know. So tough news this morning. Hard way to start the week. But it just lets you know that, what's really important in life. And some of the things we do or say, or some of the activities that we put ourselves through, or things we think about, or things we worry about, it just doesn't matter. Family is important. At the core, it should be the why for all of us of why we do what we do, why we make money, why we work hard, all those things. And so, love you, Joshua. And we're here for you. Anything you need, brother, anything you need. Today's guest is a good friend of mine. I can't wait to bring him on. We're going to talk about what he and his co-host, Ben Kowalski, been doing with the Freight 360 podcast, which is helping especially new freight brokers, get a start and get a good start and learn some skills that they need to be successful and doing some other great things. So let's go ahead and bring Nate Cross onto the show, everybody. Welcome Nate Cross from Freight 360 and Pierce Worldwide. Nate, what's up, man? How you doing, bud?
Hey, Trey. I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. It's good to see you. Before we came on the air, we were kind of joking around because your daughter cried in the background, and it's like thankful for things like that today, right? Thankful for the hard times and for the challenges because it's you just never know. So it's good to see you, man. Wearing the Red Sox hat, I see donning the socks.
Well, I've always got some Bills gear on, but I'm a big baseball fan too. And Buffalo does not have a baseball team, so I was raised a Red Sox fan, and it's almost that time of year. So.
We almost didn't have a season, so it's nice nice we're going to play starting here in about, I think 2 weeks is
I think April 7th. Yeah, a couple of weeks.
Oh, April 7th. Okay. I thought they pushed it back to the 14th, but maybe that was wrong. Maybe I didn't see that correctly, but either way, it's coming up soon, which is nice to have some baseball. For those that like sit around and eat peanuts and drink beer and watch the sport. It's a good sport for that. That's for sure. And you did get some news about your Buffalo Bills though.
Yes. In addition to all the off-season trades and acquisitions and whatnot, what's up, Von Miller? But the Bills just this morning locked down financing for their new, I think it's a $1.4 billion stadium going in at Orchard Park, right across the street from the current Bills stadium. So looking forward to it. I know you as a Chiefs fan, obviously we've got a decade or so ahead of us of just great football. So I'm looking forward to it.
We should. And the Chiefs are retooling. It's been quite the offseason for us as well, with Tyreek Hill going to the Dolphins and now bringing in Juju Smith-Schuster and some other weapons. I saw a note that all of these free agent acquisitions by the Chiefs come from teams that had high-profile quarterbacks, prolific like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, and obviously Ben Roethlisberger, who retired but was a stalwart in the league for many, many years. So yeah, I'm hoping that we have a decade more of these bets because you got to get back at me. You graciously wore the Patrick Mahomes jersey after the Chiefs knocked the Bills out, shockingly knocked the Bills out of probably the most epic playoff game in the history of the NFL.
Yeah.
Hopefully we have a lot more of those in the next decade.
I think I'm over it finally. The wounds have healed a little bit.
Well, wait until next year and we'll see what happens. They might come back. Somebody might open them back up. You never know, but
it's going to be a good long-term rivalry. Looking forward to it.
It should for sure. That's right. So take a moment and introduce yourself to let everybody know who you are. A lot of people may not know who you are. People obviously in transportation logistics probably do, but go ahead and do a quick intro of yourself, what you do, what your day job is, and of course, what you're doing at Freight 360.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Well, first, thanks for having me on here, Trey. Always love getting together with you and hopping on the show, and anything you're getting involved in is always fun and exciting. So most people probably have seen me alongside Ben Kowalski with Freight 360. It's a weekly podcast that we do. We talk everything in the freight brokerage realm, from tips for people that are brand new. We get a lot of listener driven Q&A, just, good content that's following current events and just anything around the industry. So we've been doing that for a couple of years together. It's kind of it's our little fun project that Ben and I do. My day job, I run an agent division for Pierce Worldwide Logistics based in Brentwood, Tennessee, just south of Nashville. So that's my Monday to Friday. Well, this industry is not Monday to Friday. It's 7 days a week. But so that's Freight 360, and also what I do for my day job. It all kind of started a couple of years ago. I was working for an agent-based brokerage in Buffalo, and people just started asking a lot of questions about, how do I get involved in the industry? How do I get started? Where can I, learn this, that, and the other thing? And started a podcast in 2019 and joined forces with Ben the next year. And we've been putting out content left and right, whether it's YouTube videos, blogs, the podcast, newsletter. We've guest hosted some coaching sessions and webinars with DAT. So it's been really, really good. So that's kind of what we have going on. And, it's only going up from here.
Yeah, it's a really fun podcast, Freight 360. It's an hour long, I believe, around that time, 50 minutes to an hour each week. You have the sports update, which is always fun. I've had the privilege of being on a couple times, which is great. Looking forward to the next chance to get on there with you guys and chop it up. But I think it's great that you guys really have an ear to the industry and the Q&A, getting listener feedback and answering those questions. And you're also doing some work, not only in partnership with DAT, but you're also now doing some work in partnership with TIA, with the Transportation Intermediaries Association, to help brokers, learn some new skills and to grow and have the resources, things like that. So you're kind of all in on helping freight brokers be successful, both your day job and the podcast.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So Ben, more so than myself, he's kind of laid out his vision that and I agree with him. He kind of coined it was, everybody does better work in this industry if everyone's on the same page and there's transparency just across the board with, how do I do this? How do I do that? I'm a big fan of always helping everybody. Everyone's striving to always learn more and do better. And that's kind of the message that we preach with Freight 360 is there's no dumb question, right? Everyone has to start somewhere. Whether you're a brand new broker getting your authority, or you're W-2 just going through training, or maybe you're just trying to hire your first agent and build out an agent program, right? There's things that people have never been through for that first time yet. And we just try to open up that floor for any kind of questions and just share that knowledge across the board. We're not trying to hoard our secrets, close to the chest, right? We just want to share whatever we've got to everyone out there because we all have to learn somewhere, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why we connect so much. I have that teacher coach mentality as well. Like, hey, if I learn something, then maybe it'll be valuable for somebody else as well. Let's share it. Let's collaborate. And, it's interesting, our industry, because, transportation deregulated, I think, in the late 70s, early 80s. And then, now it's like that created almost kind of a Wild West approach to freight, both for carriers and truckers, but also for freight brokers. And now we're starting to kind of come back, not so much from a regulation standpoint, although there are some that are really, really helpful, but more from a collaborative industry. Like we're using similar best practices, where we're using some similar technologies to move things forward. And I think you're right. Like the more that we can get on the same page and make it consistent for drivers, make it consistent for our customers, it's critical. This is one of the few industries where there are three really significant stakeholders that need to be included in the process. And the freight broker is right in the middle, right? Kind of working both sides and making sure that all works. So, pretty wild. So anyways, we'll talk a little bit about, when you became, managing agents and helping them. Talk about the process of selling agents on making a move. Because, freight agents, as you know, they like to work independently. They like to control their own schedule. There's a reason they're a freight agent. they want to have some of that autonomy. And yet at the same time, they want the support of the things that maybe they don't like to do, the admin support and stuff like that. How do you not only sell a freight agent on, kind of joining what you guys are doing at Pierce, but also figuring out if an agent is going to be a good fit culturally? Because, clearly, even though they're independent, there's got to be some cultural fit as well. What's that process like?
Yes, that's a great question. So, and it's kind of I think there's a big misunderstanding when it comes to the agent model versus your traditional W-2 big box brokerage. If you're W-2, and let's say you're a recruiter for a company, right? You can go out there and you can screen applicants. And typically when you're on the hiring end, you get to pick and choose who you want to add to your team. With the agent side, like you said, it's not just recruiting, right? There's a sales aspect to it. You have to pitch and sell your organization and your culture to that potential new freight agent for your company, right? It's two-way though as well, right? So you want to make sure that you're presenting them the best realistic picture of what your company and organization is and how it operates. But at the same time, you want to make sure you're getting a quality person to come in and join your team. There are a lot of companies out there that the baseline that they want to see is, hey, we want to see someone who's got 2 years experience and they've got a customer book of business to bring with them. I look at it way beyond that. It's not just a black and white situation for me, because at the end of the day, agents are a partnership, right? They're not an employee. They don't belong to us. It's an overall partnership where we work together, right? The agent is obviously bringing a lot of business to the table and a lot of operational experience and sales experience, but the freight brokerage company, so Pierce Worldwide in my case, we're bringing 4 decades of experience with us, a lot of issues that we've already ran into and solved in the past. That entire back office administrative support. So whether it's customer facing or claims or carrier vetting, all that stuff, right? It's all brought together to the table as a joint partnership. So in my opinion, that culture piece is almost number one. Yes, I want someone that's got experience and knows how to do the bare bone minimums of brokerage, and we can coach and kind of groom them to some of the specific things that they've never run into before. But if they don't fit our culture, or they don't really fit the mold of how we operate, it's just not going to be a good fit, right? We're the kind of organization that we're people first and profits come second, and the profits will always follow if you take care of your people. That's just the way that things work. So having people that are respectful and are responsive, and when issues and problems arise, we can all act like mature adults and work together instead of one person trying to work against the other one. So I think that cultural piece is often overlooked in certain recruitment efforts by companies, and it'll ultimately lead to their failure, because they might just say, hey, this person's got a huge book of business, let's bring them on. And they realize they're a pain in the butt to work with, right? You feel like you're having to always take care of them and babysit them and hold their hand, when at the end of the day, it should be walking alongside one another.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And, for those that are watching, a freight agent is really just a 1099 employee. So if you have contractors that you work with, there's a lot of similarities in that regard. And the cultural fit's important, because even though they're going to do their own thing on a day-to-day basis, like you said, when the problems arise, how are we going to work together? How is that going to work? And also, like, understanding their character. Are they going to do the right things? They're going to be representing your company, even as an independent contractor. Are they going to do the right things? Are they going to treat people well? Are they going to, take your brand and push it forward? Do they agree with your mission, your vision, your core values? Do you have a mission, vision, and core values? A lot of companies don't, and they don't use those things well in situations like this to say, is this a good fit? As opposed to just, do they have a book of business? Are they going to make me money? I think those things are really, really critical as you think about not only selling people on why they should come to Pierce, but also why you would want to have them, as a part of your organization and what you're doing. So it's a really interesting sale that you're focused on. How much time are you spending with the agents once they come on board? So let's say you've successfully, negotiated the process of bringing them on. They're a good fit. They want to work with you. What's the process of, like maybe reselling them on it, or continuing to sell them, or retain them so they don't go somewhere else? What's that like?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, every single person's different. There are some agents that, obviously, when you're working from home, it can be a very distant and lonely environment. So if you're just one guy or gal working alone from home, a lot of those folks I'm on the phone with multiple times a day. And it could be because they truly need assistance with something, or we're working on something together. Or it might just be, hey, we both work from home, and it's that social interaction, and you kind of get to feel like you're working alongside somebody. So some people, it's every day, multiple times a day. And there's other folks that they're so self-sufficient, and they almost see it as like, oh, I don't want to go bug Nate or anyone else at the corporate office. So we may not hear from them for, a couple of weeks at a time, or, a month at a time. And I find myself reaching out like, hey, how you doing? Numbers looking great. Things have been going well for you. What's new? How's everything going with the family? And, all that good stuff. So every single person I found is a different situation. And, I believe you should treat them the way that they want to be treated, right? So if they don't want to be bugged every day, don't be bugging them. But if you know that they benefit from and they want that daily and regular interaction, that's the kind of relationship that we're going to forge with them.
So in many ways, you're kind of like a sales leader. I mean, even though you're not maybe directly in the same setup as a typical sales leader, in many ways, you're taking care of them. You're staying on top of them, making sure everything's well. If things aren't going well, I assume you're the one that reaches out and says, "Hey, what's going on? How can we help you out?" So in many ways, you're doing that. And I love what you said about this. I want to unpack this just a little bit longer. Treat people the way that they want to be treated. Clearly, there's probably some processes you guys have in place. There's some structure. There's technology, but having a pulse for each person and what they want. And that could be how they want to be treated. It could be how much money they want to make. Like, what's their goal? What's their target? How do you help them get there? What's important to them? Do they have family? Do they have a hobby? Do they have these different things? I think a lot of times leaders just overlook those things because it's hard. It takes time. Like you see, like reaching out, finding out about them, having a regular, cadence with them, even if it's once a month or once a week or every day. Like those things are really critical. How do you stay on top of that, and how do you think about that as an agent? What's your exact title again? Agent, supervisor, whatever it is.
VP of Agent Development and Services. You can call it whatever you want, but
cool, right? So you're a sales leader essentially. But how do you approach that to make sure that you have a good understanding of what your team wants, where they all individually, where they're at?
So I typically try to set that expectation up front, and it's not me directing it at somebody. It's more so when I'm exploring the possibility of a new agent joining our organization, there's a lot of discussions that we have, and you tend to figure out what that person's personality is, how much attention they might want or how much they might need depending on opportunities they have coming up, how independent they truly are versus how much they're going to want to lean on you as a pillar of support. So I tend to try to set that stuff as an expectation all right up front at the beginning, right? Like, hey, I am always here for you if you need anything, but you're going to get to know your point of contact in the billing department or in the carrier pay department, or who handles claims or credit increases, or, hey, we have an issue operationally on this load. We're going to have this person right here assist you with how to track down this truck that you can't get a hold of. Right. So we set that expectation up front, and I find that works best instead of trying to piece it all together in the middle of a fire down the road. Right. So, obviously, when somebody is brand new to an organization, they might be a great freight broker and know how to do just about everything, but there's going to be a small learning curve to learn our TMS platform, for example. So the software that we're using day to day. What are our standard operating procedures that we follow when we're, building and processing a load? Is there a certain, field that has to get filled in so your customer's billing reference number ends up on their invoice properly? Does your customer have a specific billing requirement that our team needs to know about so they can hop in this system and throw an invoice and a POD or a scale ticket in there, right? We try to be as transparent and upfront from the beginning to make sure that, we're not trying to jump through hoops down the road and pick up the pieces, but rather we've established a strong rapport and relationship from day one. So I find starting off with that is probably one of the most beneficial ways to do it. And relationships can develop and change over time, right? You might have somebody that they, at first they need a lot of help, and then they're like, I'm going to take the training wheels off. I'm going to kind of do things on my own, and I'm going to revisit our lengthy in-depth conversations when I'm ready for the next step. I want to hire somebody now. Nate, what do I do? What's my first step, right? Or you find somebody that maybe they're on their own and their numbers are stagnant, and then they start to realize that there's so many more brains and experience in this organization. Let me start to pick their brain, right? Let me get the ownership involved and have some of the leadership hop on, sales calls with my customer when quarterly or mini bids are popping up, just to kind of present the company from a different perspective. So those relationships can shift and mold, and people's preferences can shift and mold. So I think it's always good to keep a pulse on that. And there's not like a cookie cutter answer to how often that relationship needs to be nurtured. You have to have a good feel and a good vibe for it. And I think that just comes down to experienced leadership right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right that things change in terms of what people want or what they need. In fact, I just heard a good friend of mine who, he and his wife have been trying to have a baby for over a decade, and they just got pregnant, which was so cool. The news was delivered, but their life's about to change. They're going to need different things than they needed, this past year. And it's critical to understand that. And shout out to my good friend, JD Gravina. He's a head women's basketball coach at Western Illinois University. He's going to be on the podcast here in a couple of weeks, but Nice. He often says that success is the product of proper expectations. Like when you set those proper expectations up front and people know what they are, they usually meet them. Most people tend to meet the expectations that are set. And that's where success really comes from, is setting those expectations up at the beginning. And I love the fact that you do that. You're really going to spell out, what does a successful journey look like, right here. And so I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah, and just to kind of expand on that, the same thing goes, right? At the end of the day, business is business, right? So if somebody's productivity is not meeting our expectations or our standard, first they should understand what those expectations are so they know if they're meeting them or not. And if we don't have discussions along that path along the way, right? And we're not giving them feedback on how they're doing, we're doing them a disservice. So the basic things like what is a healthy margin in this industry, or how much profit should I be producing on a weekly or monthly basis for me to be worth my seat as an agency within your organization? And even the other way around, right? Are we doing a good job at paying their carriers on time? Are we invoicing their customers properly? And if we're not getting that feedback from the agent or from the agency owner, it's a disservice to us, and we can't help them if we don't know the best way to do that. So that's why I'm a big proponent of that big open, almost like that open door policy you hear about with companies, right? But it's just that two-way stream of communication back and forth.
Yeah, and I think one of the greatest skills that sometimes gets overlooked for a sales leader or for somebody who's in charge of agent development is the ability to evaluate a situation and assess what's wrong. Where's the breakdown occurring? And maybe it isn't a skill that needs to be taught. Maybe it's a process that's broken or not learned. There's training that needs to be included. Maybe there's a family situation that's going on, right? There could be. I mean, I can guarantee you that there are situations where if they happen, it's hard to focus. It's hard to, dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Even though that's our job, sometimes, life happens and it makes it really difficult to do that. So, being able to assess the situation and figure out, okay, where's the breakdown here and how can I provide the proper support or training in order to overcome that? I think that's really critical. And I think I talk about this a lot. A lot of companies will take their top sales producer and put them into a sales leadership position because they think that's the next step. It's the next logical step. Well, you're the best sales producer. You must be the next leader in line. And the ability to assess a problem with team members is like one of the most critical skills. And you don't have to do that as a sales producer. I mean, you never have to do that because you're the only one that really matters when you're a sales producer. You're just focusing on yourself and your clients. And so I just think that's a skill that, some salespeople do have, and of course are going to be great leaders, but a lot of them don't. And it's one of those skills that I think gets overlooked in terms of sales, evaluating a potential sales leader or agent development manager, something like that. The ability to work with people and figure out what's going on here. What's the problem?
And you're right. And, you've got people of different varying levels of experience and confidence as well when it comes to a freight agent, right? You could have someone that's 23 years old. They've been in the industry for a year. You might have someone that's in their 50s or 60s and they've been doing it for decades, right? They all have different varying levels of experience, and you're going to treat those situations differently. And, I think when it comes to being a leader in sales or a leader in any organization, you have to be open-minded, and you have to realize that, you can't look at every situation the exact same way, right? The way that this person's problem needs to be handled and this person's problem, right? They're two different situations, two different human beings, right? And just two totally different solutions to it. So I think you can't really, I don't know that you can teach that kind of leadership. I think it's more of a experience, right? Like everyone has to get better on their own and be open-minded to absorbing the things that are good from those around them, and also learning to not absorb the things that they can identify as not so good in leadership, right? We've all had toxic leaders and people that think that they're just going to, treat everyone the same instead of treating the novice like a novice and the rookie like a rookie. So, or the veteran like a veteran, right? So it's all perspective. A lot of that comes down to just your experience and just being open-minded to putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah. And this is where, again, this is really what we're going to talk about. But I think when leaders really see their business as developing other people, developing leaders, and mentorship is really critical, where a new leader can have somebody start to show them the ropes of what to look for and how to assess things instead of just throwing them into the fire and hoping they figure it out. I think those things happen just way too much, especially, as like in the late 1980s, early 90s, that budgets in companies for leadership was nixed, all in the name of profits, corporate profits, and Wall Street, stock prices and things like that. So you had a lot of companies, major companies, that used to have leadership development programs, and they just nixed it because of the cost. Because it's a cost, like it's an investment. I constantly give praise to my friend Jason Lippert over at Lippert Components in Indiana, because he has like 14 people on staff who their only job is to develop the leaders within their company. That's all they do. So that's a significant investment in high quality talent, like, high leverage talent to develop your leadership. But it's that important, right? And so I think that's really critical to make sure it's an intentional act of developing your leaders and mentorship and having that support system in place to make sure the leaders are knowing how to work in that job most effectively.
So I like how you call it an investment, right? Because it is a cost, but it's really an investment is what it comes down to. And right. You make a very good point there too. And the coaching, the mentoring, the developing, that doesn't end. You don't get to a point in your career where you're like, hey, I made it and now I know everything and I don't have to learn anything new. That's absolutely not correct, right? Even if you become the owner of a large organization, right? There's going to be people, there's going to be peers of yours, left and right of you, and maybe in a similar company or in a different industry altogether. But you can still learn from them and some of the things that they've gone through in their experience, and they can learn from you just the same way, right? Because eventually you're going to get to the top of a totem pole, right? But there's still, in your surrounding atmosphere, there's still people you can learn from and other people's experiences that you can absorb that knowledge, learn from it, and kind of hear their story and take something away from it. So you should never stop learning, whether that's reading books or listening to podcasts or just whatever it is, right? There's always room to grow and develop.
Isn't it interesting though that we have that seduction in our mind to actually think that we can make it, like that there's an end, right? I mean, when is your marriage strong enough that you don't have to work out anymore? Or when is your health good enough that you don't need to work out anymore, or you don't need to watch what you eat anymore? Like that never arrives. That never happens. And yet a lot of times I think as leaders and as people, we think, well, I don't need to learn anymore. And yet it's a constant. Those who are I always say the kind of the cliche saying that leaders are learners, and whatever, but it's true. I guess it's a really good cliche because if you want to be a leader and if you want to be somebody that others will listen to and will follow and that you can help, you got to keep learning. You got to keep moving out there, because there's just, I think what we use like 6% of our brain power or something like that, 7%. It's ridiculous how little we actually use of our brain and how much more we could consume. And you just don't know what you don't know until you learn something. Then you go, oh, wow, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yep.
You realize, I don't know a lot of things.
I think the, like kind of like you said, people think they can just they get to the end and like they win. Right. And in my opinion, the journey along the way, that's the entire game right there. Right. Is that, if you're growing and you're developing others around you, there is no end to it, because you can always find something else that you can do to be a little bit better.
Have you seen Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game? Have you heard about that or seen that?
I've heard of it. I have never read it.
You're basically giving a commercial,
Why, right? I think I read that one.
Start with Why is one of his books. I think most of his books are 3-word titles, although I guess The Infinite Game is also 3 titles. I think they're all 3-word titles. I don't know if that was researched or what, but most of his are. Leaders Eat Last. That's another 3-word title from Simon Sinek. But anyways, the Infinite Game is a book that talks about how, there's no winner. Like, you're not going to win your marriage. Like, you're not going to win your marriage. It's an infinite game. It's not a finite game like a basketball game or a baseball game. And, being a leader, being a business owner, business is an infinite game. Like, who's going to win in business, and what are the rules? Like, there's no established rules of like who's going to win. Like, you might put a competitor out, but then another one's going to come in and the rules are going to change. You have to relearn. It's an infinite game. And when you realize that you're in an infinite game, it changes the way you think about training your body, training your mind, your relationships, all those kind of things. I think that's, that's really, really critical.
Yeah, man, there's goals along the way, right? So you could achieve a goal, right? But there should always be a next goal after that.
Right. There's none. Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's like sales.
If you have no goal and no direction, you're just going to be stagnant, and it's going to lead to you being dissatisfied and unhappy in the work that you do. So if you don't always have that next thing to strive towards, it's just you're setting yourself up for failure.
This month is almost over. It's the 28th, right? As soon as this month is over, everybody starts at zero again, right? And you got to keep working. So that's the way it goes. Man, I can't believe that 30 minutes has flown by. This has gone really fast. And we didn't even really get to talk about your podcast. So we're going to have to get you back again to talk a little bit more about podcasting, what you learned about that, how you guys came up with the idea and put yourself out there. I'd love to have you on again if you're willing to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. My one takeaway podcast tip, and this is just a teaser for the next time we talk, is your content should not be driven by you and pushed out to people. You should be taking, feedback from those who listen to and consume your content, and that's where your content should come from. Don't shove it down their throat, right? They should be dictating what it is that you're putting out there.
That is so wise. I probably need to do more of that myself. But one thing I've also found is that, the content should also be driven by the expertise of the guests. Like, when people come on here, I don't try to push my stuff, but I want to know what you've learned in your role, because you're the expert in that role. And so, having guests that are high quality guests, the content is king, right? And the guests are the ones that should be producing that content. So, and you're one of them. So thank you, man. I really appreciate you being on the show, supporting what we're doing here. Trying to really push the sales and marketing career. We talked about this. there's not even like most colleges don't have a sales major. Like it's not even really considered as a legitimate career. It's like something you do as a backup or you fall into or whatever, but it's not something you're trained for in school and all that. So just trying to raise the awareness of this profession and leadership as well and pushing that. So really appreciate your support, man, and all that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Great being on here, Trey.
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick, everybody who's watching, again, thank you so much for supporting what we're doing. And make sure you follow Nate Cross on LinkedIn. Check out their podcast, Freight 360. This week is going to be a tremendous week of guests. Again, I'm so thankful to have people on network who are great at what they do and willing to come and talk about it. So we had Nate today, which was awesome. Tomorrow, my good friend Pete Kemp's going to be on the show. This guy's a former high school, college, or a football coach, and now he owns Stealth Shield Solutions. We're going to talk a lot about leadership and coaching and what he's learned in his career. Charlie Safro on Wednesday, talk about a phenomenal CEO who creates culture in a way that's just amazing. You're not going to miss this one to hear about what she's doing with her company and the trip that she recently just took with everybody in her company. So it's going to be exciting. On Thursday, my good friend Hayden Allred is going to be on the show. This guy's just he's so creative. He's great with words. He's a great salesman. He's a great problem solver. He's a great relationship builder. Can't wait to have him on the show to talk about some things. And we got an announcement that day. So make sure you come back on Thursday for an announcement with Hayden and I. And then finally, Lauren Began, man, she is founder and CEO, and she's the maritime professor. It's her trademark. There's not a better voice in maritime. So looking forward to having her on the show on Friday. It's again another great week of guests. So make sure you come back here tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Central every day for the show. And check us out at betaconsultinggroup.com to learn more about how Beta Consulting Group can help your company with your sales and marketing initiatives. And we'll see you guys for the next episode of Standing Out, a daily podcast about sales, marketing, and leadership powered by Beta Consulting Group. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks, Nate. Appreciate it.
Thank you.